Okay, dear members of Citizens Climate Lobby, thank you for inviting me to join you today at your annual Northern California Regional Conference, and for the privilege to have worked with CCL from its inception. I so regret that I'm unable to be with you in person due to the impending shutdown of the government. Well, she wrote this yesterday. And the need to be present in Washington, D.C. to vote on what hopefully will be an agreement so a shutdown can be avoided. I want you to know that your work is more important now than ever before. The President's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement and the repeal of the Clean Power Plan represent a stunning abdication of American leadership. This is further complicated by a majority of the congressional majority of the congressional majority, I had to read that twice, that deny the realities of climate change as we witness the massive hurricanes that were amplified by abnormally warm seas and terrible wildfires across California, including the Santa Cruz Mountains in my congressional district. Thank goodness there are some members from across the aisle who recognize the seriousness of climate change. I'm a founding member of the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus, a group of 66 members split evenly between the two parties that are dedicated to these issues. The formation of the caucus is an important first step, but Congress should not delay taking real action to reverse the impacts of climate change because time is not on our side. And if you've heard Representative Eshoo in town halls or public speaking, you notice that she often repeats things, so I'm going to repeat that one. The formation of the caucus is an important first step, but Congress should not delay taking real action to reverse the impacts of climate change because time is not on our side. A group of 66 members is a strong voting bloc, and we should make ourselves heard. Last year, the caucus successfully defeated an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, you might know that as the Perry Amendment, that would have halted a study on the long-term effects of climate change in the military. All but one member of the caucus voted against this amendment, and this has given me hope for the possibility of bipartisan action on climate change in the future. Since its formation in February of last year, it was the year before, but that's good, the Climate Solutions Caucus has held several meetings to examine coastal resilience, the impacts of climate change on tourism, and other issues, but it has not introduced or endorsed any legislation. The Republican co-chair of the caucus, Representative Carlos Curbelo, has said the caucus will focus on mitigating the effects of climate change before turning to its causes. You can really sense her, like impatience. I want something to vote on here. Given the urgency of this issue, it is my hope that the Climate Solutions Caucus will endorse a carbon tax or other price on carbon, such as a cap and trade system. As you know, CCL's plan to create a $15 per ton tax on carbon emissions that increase by $10 per ton each year would reduce carbon emissions by half over 20 years. And, very importantly, the plan would not slow our economy. In fact, an independent study commissioned by CCL found that it would lead to a slight increase in employment. I just gotta love that she's reading back the results of the study. I fully support placing a price on carbon. In 2009, I helped draft landmark climate legislation that would have created a nationwide cap and trade program for carbon emissions. It's Waxman-Markey, I'm sure most are familiar. The bill passed the House of Representatives, but it was never considered in the Senate. However, because Republicans are currently the majority in the House of Representatives, any legislation to impose a carbon tax must be introduced by a Republican to have a chance of passing. I'm also a co-sponsor of the 100 by 50 Act, a reference to 2050, which requires 100% renewable electricity nationwide by 2050. I had to look up that bill because I hadn't heard of it, but it's a good one. It's all Democratic co-sponsors so far. But California is a leader in the transition to renewable energy and will be powered by 50% clean energy by 2030. But we need a bold nationwide commitment that sends a message to energy markets that the future favors alternative sources of energy. Because the caucus will not introduce or endorse any legislation that is not supported by every member, I encourage you to work with CCL chapters in the congressional districts of Climate Solution Caucus members to push for a carbon tax. This is fantastic. It's important for members of the caucus to hear directly from their constituents about how important this issue is to them. I thank each of you for everything you're doing to promote sustainability in our communities, and my only ask is that you keep fighting and keep making change. My promise to you is that I will continue to fight in Congress because we must win this challenge to protect our planet from the existential threats we face. Thank you again for inviting me to join you and for your superb work. Most gratefully, most is underlined twice, Anna Eshoo, Member of Congress.